On this episode of Athletic Training Chat, we have Nate Ervin, which if you are on Twitter or on TikTok, you have probably come across his TikTok videos and what he does in trying to highlight the profession and some of the things that go around it, not only just major issues and different things, but some of the lighter side of the athletic training profession specifically as it applies to the collegiate athletic type setting. While we do talk about TikTok, that comes at the end of the episode. Other thing we really focus on is family when it comes to being an AT, and this comes from Nate, who is in his early 30s, but still fairly new to the profession, and we talk about that a little bit, but really just kind of some unique insight on how he balances his time and schedules his time, which I thought was really interesting, and something that I hadn't looked at before, specifically for me, just not knowing if it would be feasible outside of our current conditions. So a lot of really good insight there. I think it's going to be really beneficial. As always, we are powered by Mueller Sports Medicine. I know there's some big things coming with them, some great insights that are going to be happening from a lot of athletic trainers. So looking forward to that. Please don't hesitate to reach out to them, tag them in ideas, whatever it may be. They're going to connect with you. They want to listen. So without further ado, please enjoy this episode. Well, welcome to this episode of Athletic Training Chat. We are on with Nate Ervin, and if you are on TikTok, you have probably come across him at some point. I've seen, not because I'm on TikTok, because I would never post one, but through Twitter, have seen many things and then interacting in a few different ways, connecting on the D3 athletics, which is its own unique beast that we're both involved in, but on this episode, we are going to be talking about family and being an athletic trainer, especially in the collegiate setting. For both of us being in D3, Nate has a lot more experience in it. And by that, I mean about 16, 17 months more experience of it. I really don't have any experience with it yet because everything's been canceled with the coming of my little one. But just talk about how he's balanced that, how it's feasible, what it looks like, things are going into the future and whatnot. But before we go any further and I keep talking, I want to turn it over to Nate to just give a little background about how you got to where you are and why this topic is so important to you.
Thanks, Joe, for having me on. I certainly do appreciate it. So a little bit of background on me. I got my Bachelor's of Science in Kinesiology at BYU, Idaho, and then went on to get my master's at University of Idaho. Originally I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, and most people ask me, well, how'd you end up in Idaho? I got out there because BYU, Idaho was a good option for me at the time. I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, so that's an affiliated school with that church. And then BYU Idaho has a articulation with the University of Idaho for the Masters in Athletic Training, which is how I ended up out there. But after graduation, I moved back to Ohio, to Cincinnati, and then I applied for jobs starting probably in May of 2017. And I couldn't really find anything until October of 2017, where I got hired on with Mercy Health here in Springfield, Ohio. So I'm a clinical outreach athletic trainer through Mercy Health, where I work at Wittenberg University for most of my hours during the school year. And then during the summer, I help run some different coverages through Mercy Health. Like Joel said, I have a 20-month-old at home, and so I want to say I have much more experience than you, Joel, being a new father and all, but the topic of being an athletic trainer and a family actually coincidentally came up in a TikTok.
Oh,
Someone posted on my friend's Victoria Morris's account, can you have a family as an athletic trainer? And she was like, well, I don't have a family, but these people do. And she tagged me. So that's kind of where the idea of athletic training and having a family came from, was some person on TikTok posted the question, and here we are.
fair enough. Amazing how that comes full circle.
Yeah.
Boy, before we get into all that, be just for a little bit more background setting for me as I'm asking questions. So didn't realize you were outreach, which is a kind of a unique thing. That's something that's very different from the two of us. Could you just give, currently what your staff setup is at your current job, and just talking off recording, you talked about covering multiple teams, what that looks like for you, just to lay a little bit more of a framework of what you're dealing with, and what I used to would potentially be dealing with in regards to that.
Right. So I'll give you both locations. So Mercy Health, there's there's 7 of us, I believe.
Okay.
Majority of them are at the high school level here in Springfield and the surrounding area. One's at a community college, and one's in the office. And one is actually our strength and conditioning coach here at Wittenberg University.
Okay.
As far as Wittenberg University goes, there's 4 other staff who are actually employed through the university themselves.
Gotcha.
So during the school year, I'm at Wittenberg full time. I do all my hours at Wittenberg University. I cover men's soccer, women's basketball, baseball, and men and women's tennis.
Okay.
But during the summer, because I'm employed through the hospital, I have contract hours that I'm obligated to, right? And so during the summer, we run a ACL prevention program for the local high schools, which is conditioning and weightlifting and helping the high school students get stronger so they prevent ACL injuries to the best of our ability, right? Like,
yeah, I'm with you.
ACLs just you can do all the prevention you want, but sometimes ACLs, their athletes tear their ACLs.
Yep, I'm with you.
But we also cover a pretty big wrestling camp here in Springfield. If you've heard of Jeff Jordan, state champ wrestling camp.
Okay.
We cover that during the summer, and it's a fairly big camp that's run here in Urbana, Ohio, which is just north of us. He has athletes come in from all over the United States for this camp. And then I also help cover a summer league baseball team here in Springfield during the summer. It's a wood bat league, and we're contracted to provide coverage for them for their home games.
Gotcha.
So during the summer, I'm a little bit through Mercy Health, it's a tag team effort where we all cover everything to get our hours in.
Now, in your time during the school year at Wittenberg, do you have a cap on your hours because you're employed through the hospital system? I know that based on that reaction, no, not really. Maybe supposed to, but don't necessarily.
Right. Yeah. I have to do 40 hours. They never told me I can't go over 40 hours.
Gotcha.
And it's one of those things of like, I don't want to be so strict and like capping my 40 hours, like 40 hours. And once I get that, because at the D3 level, you can get that in 3-4 days, right? Like,
sure.
During a normal year, you can get that real quickly, right? But it's also, you don't like kind of give and take almost, right? Like, you don't want to be putting in 8 hours a week because then you're not getting paid for those extra 40 hours because I'm salary, right?
Yep.
Like it's not like I'm an hourly employee. That would be a different story. I would, right? Like
No,
if
I'm
I
with you.
got paid hourly, like yeah, 80 hours would suck, but that's extra. It's an extra paycheck.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And then some.
and then some. So I really try to balance it out. And I'm lucky that my director here at Wittenberg understands that, and like
Okay.
she she doesn't expect me to be here 80 hours a week or 60 hours a week. Like she expects me to get my work done. If I get my work done, then I get my work done. Like, and if some weeks I work a little bit longer, then I can take a little bit shorter week, right?
For sure.
Like it's all about finding that balance.
So that was one of the kind of the topics, this work life, and I put balance in quotes because I don't know that I fully, in the world of an athletic trainer, especially in the traditional setting, whether that's collegiate, or just around athletics, when you talk about secondary school ATs too, like there's going to be times where no matter how hard you try, like you're not going to be able to get 40 hours a week.
Right.
But there's also times in theory, hopefully, that you're able to downshift, as you had mentioned, and kind of go through there. And that's one I know I've kind of railed back against, with some of our coaches and whatnot, is like, yeah, when your season's done, you can just shut it down for a while before you go out and hit the recruiting trail. And even then, like you can control that as much as you want. We don't necessarily have that luxury with things. How do you see that? I mean, you talked about it a little bit, do you try and get it specifically balanced? And then, one of the questions I had is how do you try and build in time with your family? Like I saw, I think a post you had about, eating dinner at work or, not till you get home at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, which, yeah, depending on what sport you're with and things like that, they're going to be nice that those happen, but hopefully they're kind of, there's space in between them and it's not a every night thing.
Right. Yeah. So I don't like the word balance, but like that's to me like that's the word that best fits because it isn't a true balance, right? Like it's some weeks you're gonna be over, some weeks you're gonna be under. Like it's just finding what works for you. And for me, I'm lucky that I have a lot of coaches. My coaches understand that, and so um, I'm always accessible, right? Like even when I'm at home, if something's an emergency, like my athletes and patients can reach out to me, and even coaches can reach out to me, right?
Sure.
But it's like when I'm home, like because I need downtime too, and like I need to not think about athletic training because eventually that can lead to burnout if you're constantly thinking about athletic training like all day long. Like you need to find something to take your mind off of that because in that way you can become a better athletic trainer, right? Like, and in my opinion, you can become a better athletic trainer if you're not constantly thinking about it. Like, because in those times where you're doing something else, that might spark like an idea for athletic training.
Right.
That might not have happened if you were not doing that said activity, right? Like, so it's when I'm home, I try to be home and present. Like that's one of the things I've learned, especially since having a kid, is like our kids don't care how bad of a day you've had, right? Like I know for you it's probably a little harder because is it a he or she? She, girl dad. I love it.
Yeah. I'm in trouble. I already know it.
Me too. I have a daughter at home too.
Yeah.
But like there have been times where I come home and she's up. And granted, it's like 6 o'clock when I get home, but like I walk in the door and she's like, "Daddy!" and like throws her hands up and is super excited, and like that's what makes working these longer hours a little bit easier, right? Like when I come home and she's excited to see me, and I could have had the shittiest day ever. She doesn't care. She cares that dad's home now.
Right.
That's when I'm like, so I try to be present when I'm at home. Does it happen all the time? No, because an athletic trainer's life goes on at home, even when it's non-athletic related, right? Like
Yep.
people reach out to you all the time about things, and it's just about setting those boundaries. And that's one of the things I do every preseason in the fall with my teams is when they have a team meeting, I go to that team meeting and I lay out my expectations. And one of the things is I'm always accessible, but my phone goes on do not disturb at 8 o'clock at night. That way, like, I can have downtime at home to wind down to go to bed. But if it's a true emergency, call me. Like to bypass it, you have to call me twice within, I think it's like 3 minutes or something for the iPhone. And it'll go through, right? Like, if it's a true emergency, call me and I'll be like, I'm available. But other than that, if it can wait, I may not respond to it right away.
Right.
And most of my athletes and coaches understand that, like, because coaches have families too. So.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing. I don't typically give out my number unless it's a specific instance, because most of the time, if you're calling me because it's an emergency, I'm probably telling you to just go to the hospital anyway. So
exactly.
Right. So if you think you need to call me for that, just go. And
go.
like,
Yeah,
that's been different from when I worked in a Division I setting to the Division III. I prefer email for a myriad of reasons now, mainly because I can mark it on red so I can remember that I need to respond to it, because I will read a text and forget. Happens enough of the time, but just few and far between will I give out my phone number, because they're important, yes, but your hamstring pain that came on at 8:30 o'clock at 8:30 at night, I can see you tomorrow for that. And if I see your email that night, I will respond to you at 5 a.m. or 5:30 when I get up, just to kind of be a pain in the butt. But that's just my own little revenge tactic.
Right.
So go ahead.
One thing that a lot of our teams use, which like I like, is GroupMe.
Sure.
Like, so that way, if the athletes don't have my number, they can always direct message me on GroupMe, because I get those notifications too. And my phone, like, I don't give my phone number out necessarily, but my phone number is on my emails, and I send out a weekly email to all my athletes so they know, like, what's on the schedule, my office hours, a link to my online scheduler. So like, because I work by appointment based only. Like,
nice.
This was before COVID even hit. I was appointment based only because one of my clinical rotations, well, two of my clinical three were at D1, right? And like D1 athletics, a lot of times it's just they come when they want to, right?
Right.
And you could have 6 patients wanting treatment at one time, and you're one person. You're like,
sure,
you came at the wrong time. So I went appointment based right off the bat, right when I started, and I did the tried and traditional of getting a calendar and having the kids come in and sign up for a time. But then this year with COVID, I was like, I don't want all these people walking in to my office if they don't have to.
Yep.
So I moved to an online scheduler. So I send that link out every week. I tell my patients to favorite that website, do whatever you need to so you have easy access to it. And on that website, they can sign up for a time to come see me. And there's an app for the iPhone too, like, so I can get notifications there that so-and-so signed up. Even if it's at 12 o'clock at night when I signed up in the morning, I get a notification. So that way I can kind of plan my day around that way too, right? Like,
yep.
If I know I have Johnny Smith coming in at 12, then maybe I don't have to show up to work till 11:45 if I have everything planned out, right? Like,
right.
Whereas if like the expectation is that I'm in my office all the time, well, that's not the case, right? And so I like doing appointment based because it's easier on everybody. me for, because then I can get that one-on-one time with my patients, right? And it's not,
Yep.
I'm working with 5 patients at one time trying to get them all in.
Yep.
So
No, that's awesome. We because of COVID, our whole staff went to that. It's not through we didn't go to an app. It's just basically we schedule into a spreadsheet, which because we're trying to keep numbers down in our facility too. But it's been, not that we've had real practice, but it's been interesting how we've still been able to generally service everybody, because it's not just popping in for a hot pack or a stretch, which we don't do a ton of anyway, but
right.
it's been interesting. Now that's without having full contact football and things like that, but I digress. One question I had for you is, you're not super far into your career yet, but you have a family and a kid, whereas when I was in your general age range, not that I'm super old, but I mean, I'm 34 now and just had my first one. So I've been out of, grad school for a while, didn't really have anything tying me down other than a dog that slept 20 hours a day. So he was pretty easy to manage. So I did a lot. I mean, it was always, being there, and that was my definition of being, dedicated and really good. That's transformed a lot over the years and definitely more so now. But how, there's always these expectations, whether they're real or perceived, not only from yourself, but from coaches and student athletes, for covering practice, well, are you going to be there at our 6 a.m. weight session? How do you manage that / also, kind of figure out the best way to not lead yourself to burnout as you manage multiple teams and you have multiple seasons?
So we're lucky here at Wittenberg that our strength and conditioning coach is also an athletic trainer.
Yeah, that is
So
that is handy.
So those 6 a.m. weightlifting sessions, luckily none of my teams are there, but I don't have to necessarily I don't have to be there because our strength and conditioning coach is an athletic trainer too,
Sure.
right? If something happens, he's there to cover that, right? So I've now practices, I'll be there, but so far I've had a few early morning practices. So most of my practices are mid-afternoon to late at night.
Gotcha.
And so one way, if I have a late night practice, then the next day I'm not necessarily coming in super early, right? That's why I send out my hours each week, because I also copy my coaches on that email too.
Right.
So they know, oh, okay, Nathan's not going to be in the office until 1 o'clock today. And it's just having an open communication with your coaches and being when I'm here, I'm here. When I'm not, I'm at home, but I'm accessible. I think
Right.
That's the biggest thing, is being accessible, being willing to answer questions for the coaches. I'm only year 3 into my career, so I still have a lot to learn. Granted, it's only year 3, but I'm 32 years old, right? I'm not this young whippersnapper, right? Where coaches can think they can walk over me because I'm a 22-year-old first year athletic trainer, right? There's that little bit of a respect thing of okay, he knows what he's talking about. He's had some life experience, right?
Yep.
Yeah, he may be a new athletic trainer, but he does know what he's talking about. So.
And so that was ultimately going to be a question I had for you is, how have you had any pushback on establishing those hours, or is it been, just that communication and demonstration, that you can get done what you need to, you can service your athletes, really well. And I'm not by any means knocking anybody. I think, if you treat your athlete 3 times a day for a specific thing, there's probably something you could get accomplished at each one of those during the day. but I've also found, and I think it kind of sort of depends on the setting too, I can't speak for your student athletes, but I would guess there's probably about 10% of ours that truly put in all the other parts of their thing that would really benefit from the 3 times a day versus, if I'm going to go and treat you and do all this stuff, you probably are still going out 2 or 3 times a week anyway. So really, how much effect am I really having by doing all this extra stuff?
Right.
But, kind of finding that minimal effective dose of, one really good session where we're really trying to get things done, rehab wise or whatever else we're doing, really it is getting accomplished what we need to. That was one we had to change here. We used to just do a morning clinic from like 6 to 7 in the morning, or some 6:30 to 7:30 or something crazy like that. And we wanted to shift it to a model of where we were going to do appointments in the morning for all our out of season athletes, and to keep them out of the afternoon when it's a lot busier. And I mean, there was pushback on that. Are we going to get people seen enough? And man, we haven't heard a peep about wanting to go back to that. I mean, you weren't going to hear it from me because I appreciate not going into work that early.
Right.
But anyway, how has that worked for you? Have you gotten any pushback? Did it take any adapting, or, just by demonstrating that you can get done what you need to and get people back, you're just proving it right there.
I've been very lucky that I haven't had a lot of pushback from any of my coaches.
Nice.
Which is a huge blessing, because they're like, okay, that's how you operate. That's how you operate. And they also understand, like, it's not just my responsibility to get the athlete back. Like, the athlete has to want to get back, right? Like, if the athlete doesn't sign up for a time to come get treatment, like, I'm not their babysitter. Like, I work in the collegiate setting now. Like, there are 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds. Like, they have to have some responsibility to, like, want to get back. And, like,
more.
And if they don't want to make the appointment to come get treatment, I'm sorry, like, coach, that's out of my hands. You can get on their case to come see me. They know my hours. They have no excuse.
Right.
And like, I get it. Like, sometimes, like, there's schedule conflicts and whatnot, right? Like,
sure.
But if they reach out to me and say, hey, I can't come in this time, can I come at this time? I'll look at my schedule and I'll be like, no, sorry, I can't. Or, yeah, I'll come in a little bit early for you because of X, Y, and Z, right? Like, because you have class at 12 o'clock through 2:30 and practice at 3 o'clock, right? Like,
right.
I'll come in at 11 so you can get treatment done before practice. But, like, I'm not going to go out of my way to hunt every injured patient down to come get treatment. If they want to get better to get back to the field, then that's their responsibility.
Yeah, that's one I've looked at a lot. I'll work with anybody. I'll work with a coach, with a student athlete. I don't necessarily work for you. Like, yeah, I'm there for the student athletes, but it's AT services, not AT servants. In terms of, like,
exactly. And I think that's where, as a profession, we kind of need to change our perspective, right? Like, that we're here to provide athletic training services.
Right.
That's not just, we're just not there just to cover practices. Like, we do so much more than covering practices. Like, we're healthcare professionals. Like, we provide healthcare services, and in the out in the real world, I mean, for lack of better terms, if, like, someone doesn't show up to the PT appointments, after so many PT appointments, they get dropped, right? Like, and I'm not saying that we drop our patients because they didn't show up, but, like, we can't wait forever for them to come to us.
Totally.
We can't wait on them, because my time is valuable. Like, if I want to get someone else back who wants to be back, I'm gonna work with them. Like, so I'm lucky too that the coaches understand that too. Like, if I say Jacob Hayden isn't coming in for rehab, then coach is like, okay, I get that. Like, and I send those reports out too, for injury reports on a weekly basis, right? Like, so the coaches are aware that who's coming to rehab and who's not. Like,
right.
Sometimes our patients and athletes don't think we communicate with their coaches, which I think is fun. It's like, there's a communication that we have to have, and
right.
they understand.
Yeah, it's funny how that works out when they try and play both sides of that coin. Yeah. Kind of bringing it all the way back to the family thing. You know, you're coming up on a 2-year-old. You know, there's always hope of more staffing and everything with that. COVID is. I mean, I had some high hopes, and not they've all been dashed because of COVID, and I understand that. Like, how do you see, you know, it being sustainable as your child grows up and gets more involved in things and starts having things on weekends and nights and whatnot? Is it sustainable? Obviously, there's a lot of athletic trainers out there that have done it and they've made it happen, and obviously it takes sacrifices, and I would argue probably a very understanding spouse. But how do you see that for you personally, and you know how that works, and just the importance of advocacy to make it so we aren't necessarily having to sacrifice multiple seasons of the year?
Yeah. I think it also comes down to having a good working relationship with your colleagues, right? Like, if you have understanding colleagues who have families, like my head athletic trainer, she has a daughter who was raised in the athletic training clinic. Like, so, and in the spring, she had responsibilities, but we all helped cover for her so she could go to her daughter's softball games, right? Like, It's all about having an understanding with your colleagues, and like, there may be times where like, hey, I need you to help cover this so I can do X, Y, and Z. Now, I don't think you make that a habit, like every time they have a game, like, hey, can you cover it? Because that's not fair to your colleagues either, right? Like,
Right.
And just finding that balance of, hey, I have this event that I would like to go to. Can you cover my practice, and I'll cover one of your practices later on, right? Like, that's kind of how we do it here at Wittenberg, especially during like the fall, when both our soccer teams play the same location. Like, myself and the athletic trainer who covers women's soccer, we don't both go to that same location, right? Like, that doesn't make sense.
No,
like,
I'm with you.
Both play at the same spot. Like, so we'll alternate like weekends if that happens, right? Like, one weekend she'll go to wherever they're playing, the next weekend I'll go, right? So that way I have that day off theoretically, right? Like, because my team, if I don't have anything else on, my team is away, but it's still being covered, right?
Yep.
So just having understanding coworkers that are willing to help you with that. Like, if they're not willing, that's a tough situation.
Sure.
And,
No, I'm with you.
And I've also been blessed too. Like, it hasn't happened since COVID has hit, but like, I've brought my daughter to work with me, right? Like, and because of like the babysitter fell through, or like we only have a 2-hour practice, and my wife is working, and we don't necessarily want to pay for a babysitter for 2 hours, right? Like, when I could just bring her to work with me, like, and my coaches have been understanding of that too. And like, the athletes enjoy it when I bring my daughter to work. Like,
yeah.
Especially my women's basketball team, like, they love it when I bring my daughter to work, like, to practice. I have multiple pictures from last season of my daughter, like, sitting on the scorer's table drinking a bottle, or like on the bottom portion of like a cart, just like chilling while practice is going on. Like,
Yep.
at the end of the day, you do what you have to do, like, and get it. As long as you get your job done, like, I'm under the impression of like, who cares, right? Like, if you're still an effective athletic trainer and you bring your kid, like, and it's not a complete distraction, and then bring your kid, because it also allows coaches and the athletes to see another side of you and not just the athletic training, right?
Absolutely.
And like, you may be this tough, like, athletic trainer and like have this persona of being super tough, but then when you bring your kid, you're a completely different person, right? Like,
Right.
and I just think it helps build that relationship with everybody. Like, so I've been blessed that I've been able to bring my daughter to work with me. And I don't make it a habit, right? Like, but there are circumstances where like I have to bring her with me. Like, I'm not just gonna leave her at home, right?
Oh, I'm with you.
And having an understanding spouse is big too, right? Like, probably my advice to younger students who want to get into athletic training is, or even current athletic trainers, is like, make sure your significant other understands what an athletic trainer, like the work hours that we put in, right? Like,
Yep.
my favorite phrase with my wife is, I'll be home when I'm home. Like, I expect I'll be home at 7 o'clock, but like, you just don't know, right? Like,
Right.
because an emergency could happen, and now you're stuck at work until like 9 o'clock at night, and you're like, well, I didn't plan for this, but like,
Right.
So having an understanding spouse or significant other is big in my opinion. Like, but it makes that the time, like when I'm home, that much more important, right? Like, that I'm home, and like, so for me, like, the mornings is like when I spend most time with my daughter, because in
Gotcha.
the evening, like, I'm at work, and most of the time when I get home, it's 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and she has a bedtime of 8 o'clock, right? Like,
Right.
so there's been times where like I come home and she's already in bed. So like, I'm the one that gets up in the morning with her, so I can get that quality time with my daughter, because I don't necessarily get it at night. So,
Makes sense. Anything else around AT and family that we didn't cover that you'd like to?
no,
No.
I just think having that open communication with coaches and administration of like, I have a family. It's important to me. Like, when I'm at work, I'm at work. But when I'm home, unless it's a true emergency.
Sure.
Like, then you like, and not like when I'm at home, it's not like I won't answer the call. Like, but I'm not gonna have a 3-hour call at home when that could easily be done at the office the next day.
Right. Right.
So
Time and a place for different things.
exactly. And having an understanding administration that's family oriented too, like, and that's one of the reasons why like I didn't want to go D1 athletics, because yeah, there are situations that are family oriented, but like my perception of D1 athletics at the time was like, you're in the office from like 6 a.m. until like 9 o'clock at night, right? Like, so how can you have a family working those crazy hours, right? Like, now I know that's not how D1 athletics works, but like, it's just a different beast, and like, so that's why I'm glad I found the D3 athletic model,
I'm with you.
because I feel like it's a little bit more understanding of families.
I agree with you. I think there's a level of understanding and what athletics kind of like, and I've heard that, D3 is what the student athlete is technically on paper supposed to be. And so that's an easier argument to just like back it off for a second to say, hold on, we need to reevaluate how nuts we're getting with this
Right.
in terms of hours and different things. And I know that's something we've changed too, is we used to have a set close time, and that would start getting abused where people would show up specifically right before it closed so they could do a 10-minute thing because we're open for 10 more minutes, and everything else had been done for half an hour. And so we've kind of switched it up to we're closed when we're done, and if you've got questions on that, you got to communicate it and get it taken care of. And if you don't, you're going to find a closed door.
Right. Yeah. That's the other, like, it's like, why are you waiting until the last minute to come see me? Like,
Sure.
Like, especially if there's no prior communication, right? Like that's what bugs me, is like, you don't hear from them at all throughout the day, and then they show up right before you close, and you're like, sometimes I'm that bad guy. I'm like, sorry, I'm going home. Like,
I think you have to.
I've been here X amount of hours. I've been here since 11 a.m. You're now coming in at 9:50, and I'm closing at 10. No way. Like, here's an ice bag if you need it, but make an appointment. You know how to make an appointment. Make an appointment to come see me.
There you go.
That's my other favorite phrase for my athletes and patients, is like, well, you know how to make an appointment. Make the appointment. Like, I'm not gonna baby you and hold your hand all the way through. Like, that's how I am. Like,
I think it's a good place to be. I fully am on board with that. Well, since we kind of covered all that, if you're up for it, we'll jump into the AT chat questions.
Yeah. Let's let's talk TikTok a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Before we, since we mentioned it, because people are probably like, why is he on TikTok? So, I started TikTok probably, I want to say like March or April, I want to say, but it took me like 4 months before I actually like made my first TikTok. Like, I had a TikTok account, and like I saw like the potential of having this, because the younger generation, like, they're all about TikTok and like social media. And like, I thought, well, it's a great way to connect with them. So back in like December, January, I saw a TikTok of like this outfit change of like, you jump and you change outfits, right? I was like, oh, I can do like a game day one where like I'm in like my khaki, my polo, and my golf shorts like prior to the game, and then I jump and I change into my business attire for basketball games. But I was like, I can't do it yet. And like, I had that internal battle, like, should I do it or should I not do it? So I didn't end up doing it. I just scrolled on TikTok for like 3 months, and then I saw Eli Kassab and Matt Shearer have like a little dance battle on TikTok. And I was like, if those two can have a dance off on TikTok, then there's no reason why I can't get in on this. So then I just started making TikToks from there, and then it's been going ever since. And I had one content kind of go off, and like I had my athletes reaching out to me all the time, like, you're on TikTok now. I'm like, you're TikTok famous. I'm like, I am not TikTok famous. Like, I had one go viral, and like, that's it, but I'm not TikTok famous. And like, it's a lot of fun. Like, it's a way for me to like kind of decompress too. And like, because we all have stories of like athletes asking ridiculous questions or like doing stupid stuff that like is comical, but like people don't necessarily see that. And so like, that's kind of some where some of my TikTok content comes from is from the athletes and their decision making. But it's all fun and games, and just trying to bring awareness to athletic training, and like it's another way for people to see that we have a different side to us. Like,
Yep.
we can be fun, like that we can we're not serious all the time, and we know how to make fun of ourselves and like have a personality. And so, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. So yeah.
Just for anybody listening, we'll have Nate's TikTok linked up on his episode page. So if you want to check him out, definitely entertaining. I catch them all on Twitter when they come over. That's where I see them. So
yeah, I do post them on my Twitter account and on my Instagram account too.
Perfect.
So if you have any one of those three, you'll see them if you give me a follow.
Sounds good. Now ready for those AT chat ones?
Yeah. Yep.
Where do you see the AT profession going in the next 5 to 10 years? And then can you kind of set the example?
I see athletic training being recognized more as a healthcare professional than we already are. Like, and not just providing coverage for practices and games, and we're not just the hydration specialist. Like, we do so much more, that we do provide healthcare services to our patients. And I also think we'll have more of those the set hours, right? Like, not just we're open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Like, this is when we're open, and this is when we expect you to be here, like between these hours. And I also think you're going to see a lot more athletic training services going the medical route, I think.
Yep.
And not through athletics route. At least that's my hope.
I'm with you.
So that's where I see it going.
I think those will all be good things. Obviously, as we talked about, you haven't been in the profession itself super long, but if you could go back and give yourself some advice as a younger athletic trainer, or even if you want to say as a student, or however you want to place it, what advice did you go back and give yourself?
I would say take the time that you need to, like, especially for me, my master's program as a student, I was working 25 to 35 hours a week as a student, right? Like, and I was in the clinic just like the athletic trainers were. And like, I think knowing that it's okay to take time for ourselves is okay. Like, we don't have to be the superhero that we think we have to be. I mean,
right.
It's okay to take some PTO, some time off to recover so you don't burn out. Like, I think that's the biggest thing, is like, you just have to communicate that with either your preceptor or your boss. Like, hey, I need a day. I'm going to take a day. Like, and realizing like that it's okay to take a day.
Yep.
Like, so you don't burn out. I think that's probably the biggest thing, is like, and I really only started coming into that, I would say, within the past year.
Sure.
Like my first 2 years here, like, I was that gung-ho, fresh out of college athletic trainer, right? Like, that was like,
Yep.
I'm gonna work all the time, like all the time. But like now that I'm in my third year and having a kid at home too, like that changed a lot for me too. Like
Absolutely.
to realize it's okay to take some time for yourself. Like people will survive without you.
That's a lesson I've learned the hard way, and even more so this year. I haven't been going in a lot because of the worries of close contact and a very young child. And so I've had to rely on my students and doing video stuff with them and my staff to just continue to maintain the standards. And it's easier said than done. So I'm with you there. What has been the most influential resource you have come across so far in your career?
To be honest, it's probably Twitter, surprisingly, because
it's more
there's a
common
lot
than
of
you think.
there's a lot of athletic trainers and PTs that are on Twitter who that like post different ways to like do things and like knowing like different ideas on how to do like a rehab and like being able to reach out to like you, for example, like, hey, you're in the same situation as I am. Like, what did you do with this? Right? Like, before this, like, so I would just say social media in general because.
Totally with you.
Like,
I get a lot of rehab ideas from social media.
Yeah. And it's just like, yeah, you can always go and like do the old like internet search and do it that way or through the book, like traditional, like searching the books and whatnot. But those are fine ways to do it too. But like social media, it's just so much easier because you can like look things up and like you can have hundreds of different ways to do a rehab. And it's like,
absolutely,
they're all great ideas. You just have to tailor it to your needs.
Yep. If you could change or eliminate one thing, could be a modality, a common practice, a mindset, whatever you would like it to be in the field of athletic training, what would it be?
That we don't have to work 60 to 80 hours a week to be effective athletic trainers. I think that was like the expectation when we first started, when the profession first started, is that we would be around all the time and like, but like we can be just as effective working 40 hours to 50 hours a week. And some people will be like, well, you're working 50 hours a week. What's the difference? Well,
a lot.
A lot. Like, it's a lot. Like, so I'm not opposed to working 50 hours, right? Like, as long as I can get that back in a different way, right? Like, recuperate that during the summer, for example, or no, I'm not going to work 80 hours a week. Even 70 hours, I'm not going to do it. But I just think that mindset of we have to be around all the time. That's what I would get rid of is we don't. Like, we're just as effective working 30 hours a week. Like, it's all about managing your time and being efficient.
Couldn't agree more. And then lastly, what does being an athletic trainer mean to you?
Being an athletic trainer to me is being a healthcare provider and helping my athletes and patients return to activity, whatever activity that is.
Yep.
Whether that's starting again or getting playing time, or if that means being able to reach up to grab a bowl for soup at home. right? Like just being there and helping patients return to activity.
Well said. As we kind of reference, we'll link up all of your social media, but if people wanted to reach out to you for any specific reason, is there a best place?
Probably Twitter.
Sounds good.
Shoot me a DM, and I'll probably I'll respond. As I tell my patients, I have a 48-hour rule that if I try to reach back out to you within 48 hours of you contacting me.
Fair.
Because that's the other thing too, is sometimes athletes expect us to respond to them right away. And it's like, no, it's not the case. I'll reach back out to you I'll try my best within 48 hours. And that usually is satisfactory for them.
Yep, I'm with you there. Well, sir, I appreciate you taking the time and talking about family and AT, and it's reaffirming to hear things from someone in a similar situation. And a year and change down the road from where I'm at. That's good to hear. So,
yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we will catch you on the social medias and also look forward to some new TikToks here in the near future.
Yes, sir.